So as populations have increased on Cape Cod, our activities on the coast have increased. It's coming from our septic systems, it's coming from runoff from our lawns, from the roads. All this nitrogen stimulates plant growth in the coastal waters. That leads ultimately to a drawdown of oxygen and just a general deterioration in water quality.
The current project examines the potential of 3 oyster agriculture methods to remove nitrogen and provide data needed by decision makers. The Shellfish Constable in Falmouth, Massachusetts is aiding with the logistics.
Depending on where you're looking to move forward with a system, there's obviously multiple concerns. There's aesthetic concerns. There's also multiple uses. There's boating that takes place, there's fishing that takes place, there's shellfishing which takes place in these estuaries. Although they've been impacted, they're used for recreational purposes.
We're trying to come up with a best practices protocol for 3 different systems. We have a system that's a floating bag system that sits on top of the water column, and these are these black bags you see on top of the water column. We have a mid-water system that holds the bags about a foot below the surface of the water, and then we have traditional bottom cages, which are cages that lay right in the sediments.
All 3 growing systems grow oysters successfully. However, each system differs when it comes to logistics and their effect on the ecosystem.
The top systems, the higher level systems, the floating bags, are really the easiest system to maintain and to flip, just because the individual bags are the lightest, and you can go in and you can kind of flip a whole system pretty rapidly.
The floating bag system is the most commonly used in Falmouth. Floating bags are light and easy to maintain. They have a small footprint on the bottom, which is good for permitting. There is less fouling of the shellfish bags compared to the other systems. However, they are visible to neighbors and homeowners.
The bottom cages tend to be fouled more by macroalgae. It doesn't look as clean as the other 2 systems. The advantage of the bottom cages is that there's no surface expression on the top of the water, and so it's high neighbor acceptance because they don't actually see anything.
The bottom ones are the most difficult because they're actually on the bottom. You really need a lower tide to work them.
Bottom cages cannot be seen from the surface, so activity can take place above them. The shellfish are grown on the bottom, which can be considered a more natural location. They have a large bottom footprint and collect more growth, which can impact permitting. They are considered the most difficult to work.
The midwaters are nice because it's a little bit of kind of a foot in both worlds. You can flip them up. You can actually address the bags from the surface. The whole system rolls over. But one of the issues with setting them up and later on is with maintaining them is that they get so heavy, particularly with the second-year animals.
Midwaters are a combination system with floats and cages. They are easy to access from the surface and flip over. They can become heavy to flip during the second year of growing. They are also visible from the surface, but if placed correctly, they may help with coastal erosion.
There are advantages to each system depending on what you're trying to accomplish and what your constraints are. And so while floating bags might be appropriate in Site A, Site B may want to use a different system. Homeowners on the coast have these very valuable properties. And the reason they have that value is because of the vista they have. And we don't want to destroy vistas. We don't want to pave over an entire embayment with oyster bags. Our goal is to put in enough oysters to remediate the water quality, and so that you have good water in front of those homes, which increases property values. If you have nasty water in front of those homes, those property values plummet very quickly.
When you're working with a new community, putting in a new farm or you're doing anything else, you really need to have a person who's dedicated to helping educate the neighborhood and the neighbor. And one of the hallmarks of our farms are they look neat. They look professional. There's something that, we hope that our neighbors are proud to look out and say, hey, this is an oyster farm.
We have representatives from Department of Marine Fisheries, people from the Cape Cod Commission. We have people from the Department of Environmental Protection, MassDEP. These are the regulatory bodies that ultimately will have the say in how towns quantify the nitrogen remediation. So DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, is looking at exactly how much nitrogen can we remove during this system and how do we verify that. DMF is more concerned with health issues. Are these oysters safe for human consumption? And then the Cape Cod Commission have a little bit more of a commercial viewpoint of things. How does this benefit the Cape Cod community? The first thing communities are concerned about are the economics of it. Now we can engineer systems, sewers, wastewater treatment facilities, they work, right? It becomes centralized. They're also really expensive, and there's a lot of disturbance in putting them in because we don't have sewers on Cape Cod yet. So that means digging up to every house, putting a sewer in, and that's a huge expense for the towns, for the homeowners. We are not saying that sewering is not part of the solution. It's going to be. Sewering will prevent more nitrogen from entering the bay. What sewering isn't going to do, it isn't going to remove the nitrogen that's already in the coastal waters. Oysters can do that.
You know, having that volunteer outreach piece for us is why our program has been uniquely successful. You just can't do it with one group. You have to have true community buy-in. We have thousands and thousands of hours that people have volunteered. They're the ones that are down there, you know, cleaning the upwellers, handling the animals on a daily basis. Sometimes families show up. You know, we've had church groups show up. They're more the team than we are because there's a lot more volunteers hours going into it than there are staff hours. The other group that we work with is the Barnstable County Sheriff's Department and the inmates, and we do a lot of inmate work, and we're looking to extend that.
Municipal shellfish projects have many variables to success. Outreach and education of those being affected is vital to how the project will be perceived. Getting the proper input from state agencies keeps the process moving smoothly. The economics of a project are always important to municipalities, and the potential for creating a project that ultimately might pay for itself is appealing. Finally, having a group of volunteers who feel ownership of the project creates a much-needed workforce.
All of our oars are in the water at the same time, and we're all pulling in the same direction, so that I'm not replicating something that's already going on. I'm building on something that's going on. On the Cape, if we can all get our arms around what we're all working on and then take a chunk of that, then hopefully we can advance what we're doing at a greater speed and not redo a lot of the work that's already been done.
We can't put oysters everywhere. We don't want to. It wouldn't be ecologically sensitive to pave over an embayment with floating bags of oysters. However, oysters are a natural part of the ecosystem. They have a niche here, and so if you put them in the right spots, they can sit there and do their job.